All right, welcome to another deep dive, everybody. Today we're going to be looking at this material on Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. We've got some pretty powerful excerpts from the novel and some really interesting background info on Atwood herself.
Yeah, it's immediately obvious that we have both the straight up story and the context in which it was created.
Yeah.
I think that offers a really unique opportunity to explore not just this fictional world, but to also look for potential real world echoes and influences. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the excerpts that you've pulled really ground us in Offred's experience, and we start with her immediate surroundings. So let's get right into her room.
Okay.
Okay, so let's unpack this space. I mean, it's described as so basic: a chair, a table, a lamp. But almost immediately, you get these kind of unsettling details, like the plastered over wreath on the ceiling, hinting at a removed chandelier. It suggests a very deliberate stripping away, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that blank space speaks volumes. The removal of the chandelier isn't just redecorating, it's a calculated security measure.
Yeah.
I mean, Atwood makes it very clear that anything that could be used for self-harm has been eliminated.
Yeah.
And it really kind of drives home this regime's paranoia and their understanding of that basic human desire for autonomy, even in death.
Absolutely. And that feeling of being sort of contained continues with the window, right?
Yeah.
It only opens a crack and the glass is shatterproof. And so it's not just about keeping outsiders out, it's about keeping the handmaids in. It's about preventing any escape attempts, not just physical escapes, but as Atwood puts it, those other escapes, the ones you can open in yourself, given a cutting edge.
Yeah, it really kind of underscores the regime's understanding that the control has to extend beyond the physical body. They're not just concerned with preventing outward rebellion,
Right.
but also any flicker of internal dissent,
Right.
or the ultimate act of self-determination.
Then you have these details that seem on their surface almost like comforting, but they carry this real undercurrent of something darker. Take the oval braided rag rug. It's called folk art, archaic, made by women in their spare time from things that have no further use.
Mm.
It's framed as this kind of nostalgic return to traditional values, like waste not, want not. Right. But Offred's internal question,
Yeah.
why do I want? I mean, it really exposes the emptiness behind this
Yeah.
enforced domesticity.
I think that rug becomes a really potent symbol of Gilead's manipulation of women's labor and their kind of twisted interpretation of tradition. Even in their supposed spare time, their creativity is channeled into something deemed acceptable and aligned with Gilead's ideology. And that waste not, want not maxim, when we consider Offred's own situation, that I am not being wasted.
Right.
It takes on this particularly sinister and ironic edge.
Yeah. And even something as simple as this framed print of blue irises on the wall, flowers are still allowed. It feels like this very carefully rationed permission, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And then she wonders if every handmaid has the exact same, these impersonal furnishings, government issue. Think of it as being in the army, Aunt Lydia says. I mean, it's so dehumanizing,
Right.
this stripping away of any vestige of individuality.
The uniformity really reinforces this idea that the handmaids are interchangeable vessels. They're reduced to their reproductive function and devoid of personal identity.
Right.
And then that military comparison really further kind of emphasizes the regimentation and just complete lack of autonomy that they experience.
Even the bed itself is so stark. Single, medium hard mattress, white flocked spread.
Yep.
And Atwood pointedly notes that nothing takes place in the bed but sleep or no sleep. It reduces the space of potential intimacy and rest to just a place of either oblivion or anxious wakefulness,
Yeah.
completely devoid of personal connection or pleasure.
I mean, I think the bed really becomes this powerful symbol of the handmaid's diminished existence. It's a site of potential conception,
Right.
yet utterly stripped of any intimacy or agency or even comfort.
Yeah.
And the focus solely on sleep or the absence of it really underscores their profound psychological confinement.
And this rationing of physical space, it mirrors the rationing of thought itself.
Absolutely.
Like other things now, thought must be rationed. There's a lot that doesn't bear thinking about. Thinking can hurt your chances, and I intend to last. It's such a stark insight into the survival mechanisms within Gilead, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, this deliberate limitation of inner life is a classic tactic of totalitarian regimes,
Right.
by controlling not just your actions, but your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Gilead aims to eliminate the very possibility of rebellion from within.
Mm-hmm.
And so Offred's awareness of this and her conscious effort to ration her thoughts, they become these subtle but really crucial acts of resistance, I think.
Now let's contrast this incredibly austere environment with the description of Serena Joy's sitting room.
Yeah.
The immediate impression is so different. Elegance, yes, but mixed with something deeply unsettling.
I think the stark contrast between Offred's confined space and Serena Joy's more luxurious sitting room immediately like highlights that rigid power hierarchy within Gilead. The wives retain, certain privileges and comforts,
Right.
but even their apparent elegance is tainted by the underlying oppressive atmosphere and their complicity in the system.
Atwood gives these really specific and almost unsettling details about the decor. There are two paintings of women in dark dresses, possibly meant to be ancestors, but they're described with these really unflattering characteristics. Stiff, constricted, pinched faces, starched caps, grayish-white skin, narrow eyes. They don't exactly project an image of warmth or a comforting sense of heritage, do they?
No, they don't. I think these portraits, they seem to represent Gilead's constructed version of ideal womanhood from the past, repressed, constrained, devoid of individual expression. And I think the negative description subtly suggests that this history of constraint, whether it's real or imagined, mirrors the present reality in a different and maybe even more insidious way for the wives.
Then you have these items on the mantelpiece, an oval mirror, two pairs of silver candlesticks, and this rather bizarre white china Cupid with a lamb. It's this strange mix, as Atwood writes, of hard lust for quality, soft sentimental cravings that seems to define Serena Joy's taste.
I think this peculiar blend really reveals Serena Joy's complex character. She embodies both the rigid adherence to Gilead's values, but also a lingering, almost desperate yearning for the sentimental aspects of a more traditional, perhaps even romanticized past. And the incongruous Cupid with a lamb introduces this strange element of misplaced innocence or perhaps a longing for a maternal role that is now twisted and unattainable for her in the way she once envisioned.
And the flowers are interesting, too. You have dried arrangements sitting alongside a vase of real daffodils.
Yeah.
It's this kind of juxtaposition of something preserved, almost lifeless, and something vibrantly alive, though even those living flowers are going to eventually wither.
Absolutely. I think the dried flowers could symbolize the withered hopes and dreams within Gilead, particularly those of the women.
Right.
While the real daffodils offer this fleeting glimpse of natural beauty and life that still persists.
Yeah.
However fragilely, even under this oppressive regime.
The scents of the room are also so vividly described. Lemon oil, heavy cloth, the fading scent of daffodils, cooking smells, and then Serena Joy's signature Lily of the Valley perfume. And this last one seems particularly significant for Offred. It evokes such a strong and really unpleasant reaction.
Yeah, I mean, the analysis of the perfume significance is key here. Offred connects it to the scent of prepubescent girls, Mother's Day gifts, white cotton, dusting powder, associations with a lost innocence, this sense of unfeminized flesh.
Yeah.
It evokes a feeling of illness in her, really highlighting the artificiality and perhaps even the perversion of Gilead's ideals of womanhood and motherhood.
And it's in this space that Offred experiences this really sudden urge to steal something. This small act of rebellion and a fleeting feeling of power, even though she recognizes it immediately as an illusion and far too risky.
Yeah.
But it speaks to this constant internal struggle for agency, even in the smallest ways.
It's really a testament to that enduring human need for control and individuality, even when faced with overwhelming oppression. It's this small, desperate spark of defiance in an environment that's specifically designed to extinguish any such impulse.
Even Offred's physical posture in Serena J's presence,
Right.
thighs pressed together, heels tucked under, head lowered. It speaks volumes about the enforced subservience and these really rigid power dynamics at play.
Absolutely.
And that lingering taste of toothpaste, fake mint and plaster in her mouth adds this almost sensory layer of artificiality and discomfort to the whole interaction.
Her carefully controlled posture and that unpleasant artificial taste really underscores the performative nature of her existence within Gilead. She's constantly aware of her physical presence and the absolute necessity of adhering to the prescribed norms of behavior and deference.
And then this truly chilling statement from Aunt Lydia, Ordinary is what you are used to. This may not seem ordinary to you now, but after a time it will. It will become ordinary.
Yeah.
It's such a simple statement, but the implications are absolutely terrifying.
I mean, I think that single, deceptively simple statement
Mm-hmm.
really encapsulates the insidious power of totalitarian regimes. This normalization of the horrific is a fundamental mechanism of control. It suggests that even the most extreme forms of oppression can become accepted,
Right.
even internalized over time.
Yeah, right.
And effectively, eroding resistance from within.
Let's move on to the wall, which is such a central and undeniably potent symbol of Gilead's power. On this particular day, Offred notes the absence of bodies due to the season. The flies and the smell would be unbearable, but she pointedly contrasts this with the winter month when the bodies hang for much longer.
Yeah, the absence of the bodies, rather than providing any sense of relief, actually creates this different kind of psychological impact, doesn't it? It
Yeah.
becomes almost more foreboding.
Right.
This blank canvas of potential dread,
Yeah.
like the unsettling calm before a violent storm,
Yeah.
and the seasonal variation in the display of the bodies really further highlights the calculated and utterly dehumanizing nature of this practice.
And for Offred, the wall carries such a profound personal weight. There's this constant underlying fear of seeing Luke's face among those displayed. Alongside this almost irrational, desperate belief that he might somehow be alive, hidden behind the bricks of a former university building that now belongs to the eyes.
Right.
It really shows like the human capacity to cling to even the faintest glimmer of hope amidst just overwhelming despair.
Her deeply personal connection to the wall really underscores the immense human cost of Gilead's regime. That almost illogical hope that Luke might be concealed within like the university walls
Yeah.
reveals the profound psychological toll of uncertainty and the desperate need to find any sign of her lost loved ones.
She describes the former university within the wall, the red brick buildings, some with these beautiful Romanesque doorways, and women salvaging these horrific public executions still take place there, but no one is ever allowed inside the buildings themselves anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's this place that embodies both the memory of past knowledge
Right.
and the brutal reality of present-day violence.
Yeah, I mean the repurposing of the university, this former center of learning and intellectual freedom and the exchange of ideas
Right.
into a site of public execution is a particularly potent symbol of Gilead's systematic suppression of knowledge
Yeah.
and independent thought.
Yeah.
And the fact that the salvagings of women occur there adds another layer of chilling significance, I think,
Yeah.
highlighting the regime's specific violence against women.
Then there's Offred's almost wistful thought about Luke possibly being in the library, a temple she remembers, with white steps and murals depicting angels and fighting men, victory and death. She clings to the belief that this place of knowledge and history wouldn't have been destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps desperately needing to believe that some vestiges of the past remain untouched and safe.
I mean, the library, with
Uh-huh.
its grand architecture and powerful symbolic murals, represents this lost world of knowledge and culture and perhaps even like intellectual resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And Offred's, you know, hopeful belief that it remains intact really reflects this deep yearning for the intellectual and artistic heritage that Gilead has so ruthlessly sought to, erase and control.
Moving on to the everyday societal restrictions that are in place in Gilead, we see this stark and very telling contrast of empty storefronts with their windows soaped over, while stores selling goods specifically for men
Yeah.
remain open and functioning. It's such a clear indication of the regime's priorities and this deliberate shutting down of anything that's deemed a vanity, particularly when it comes to women.
It really highlights Gilead's like deeply ingrained gendered control over commerce and consumption, and that explicit focus on shutting down anything deemed a vanity reveals their obsession with regulating female appearance and suppressing any form of like female self-expression or independence.
And then we have the Soul Scrolls, this almost ubiquitous franchise in every city center and suburb, which really suggests just how profitable and therefore how important they are to the functioning of this regime.
Yeah, the sheer ubiquity and obvious profitability of the Soul Scrolls really underscores like the performative nature of piety within Gilead. It's a system where even prayer can be ordered and mass produced, effectively reducing a deeply personal act of faith to like a mere commodity
Right.
and a public demonstration of, supposed devotion.
And these soul scrolls actually function through these printout machines that the handmaids have this darkly humorous nickname for, holy rollers. These machines churn out endless rolls of pre-written prayers that are ordered electronically via something called compuphone, often by the commander's wives, as a very public display of their supposed piety.
I love the handmaid's cynical nickname, the Holy Rollers. It really reveals like their underlying awareness of the superficiality and the manufactured nature of this,
Yeah.
enforced piety.
Mm.
And the fact that the commander's wives use these services as a status symbol further exposes the hypocrisy and the emptiness at the core of Gilead's religious pronouncements.
We also get these brief but always chilling glimpses of the eyes and their pervasive presence, those ominous black vans marked with the white-winged eye, causing other vehicles to immediately pull over in deference, and offers just instant fear of being overheard, even thinking certain things, really underscores the constant state of surveillance they live under.
The eyes represent the omnipresent and largely invisible surveillance apparatus that underpins Gilead's power. They foster an atmosphere of constant fear and deep suspicion where even private thoughts are potentially monitored and punished. And the immediate and unquestioning obedience of other vehicles to their presence speaks volumes about the absolute authority they wield.
This constant state of alert and fear makes Offred reflect on what life was like before Gilead. How did we live then? There's this pervasive sense that whatever was happening at the time felt completely as usual.
Yeah.
Even though, in retrospect, the changes that were occurring were gradual, but ultimately led to this devastating reality.
I think Offred's poignant reflection on the past really highlights the inherent dangers of complacency and the insidious way in which fundamental freedoms can be eroded, often without people fully realizing the extent of the change until it's far too late.
Right.
And that feeling that everything was as usual beforehand underscores how easily societies can become accustomed to subtle shifts in power and control.
And she uses this incredibly powerful and disturbing analogy of a gradually heating bathtub. You'd be boiled to death before you knew it.
Yeah.
It really perfectly captures this insidious and almost imperceptible nature of Gilead's rise to power.
Absolutely. I think that analogy is a stark and enduring warning about the critical importance of vigilance and the absolute necessity of recognizing and actively resisting even seemingly minor encroachments on liberty before they escalate into full-blown oppression.
Even the newspaper stories of horrific violence against women from the time before Gilead now seem to offer like distant and almost unbelievable bad dreams dreamt by others.
Yeah.
There's this haunting sense of denial, a collective failure to recognize these warning signs that were so clearly present.
Yeah. The dismissal of these disturbing news stories as something happening to other women by other men reveals a deeply problematic lack of solidarity.
Right.
And a dangerous unwillingness to confront the potential for such violence to become widespread and normalized. It speaks to a societal fragmentation that Gilead will later exploit.
Then we're introduced to Moira, and even in these early memories, her fiercely rebellious spirit shines through so clearly. She just breezes into Offred's room asking for cigarettes, completely unfazed by any emerging social constraints.
I think Moira's initial appearance in Offred's memories provides this vital and immediate contrast
Yeah.
to the enforced passivity
Right.
that defines the handmaids in Gilead. Even before the full establishment of the regime, she embodies this powerful sense of independence and defiance,
Yeah.
and a refusal to conform, immediately establishing her as this crucial figure representing the spirit of resistance.
And the memory of the Underwhore party, this almost darkly humorous Tupperware-style party for selling lingerie,
Yeah.
is both funny and subtly subversive.
Yeah.
Moira's sharp humor and Offred's shared laughter in that moment. I mean, they feel like a small but really significant act of defiance against the increasingly puritanical norms that were already beginning to take hold.
Yeah, I think the Underwhore party, with its provocative name, represents, a form of female agency and camaraderie, and a direct rejection of the increasingly restrictive societal expectations surrounding female sexuality.
Yeah.
And Moira's characteristic humor
Yeah.
and that shared laughter with Offred, really highlight the crucial bonds of female friendship and the subversive potential that even seemingly trivial acts of rebellion can possess.
And we get this this poignant glimpse into Offred's relationship with Luke before Gilead.
Yeah.
These very ordinary Sunday afternoon conversations they would have about buying and fixing up an old house with a garden
Yeah.
and the idea of having children. It was just a game for Sundays. The casualness and freedom of that simple future now feels almost achingly unimaginable in her current reality, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
These like tender memories of shared domestic dreams with Luke really underscore the profound and devastating loss of personal aspirations and the taken for granted freedoms of the past. The simple gain for Sundays now carries this immense weight of what has been so brutally stolen from them.
There's even this interesting disagreement between Offred and Moira about the idea of women-only enclaves.
Yeah.
Offred argues against it quite logically, pointing out that men wouldn't simply vanish. And then Moira's rather cutting analogy to catching syphilis really highlights their contrasting viewpoints on gender relations, even in that pre-Gilead time.
It reveals the differing perspectives on how to address gender inequality
Right.
even before the rise of Gilead. Moira's kind of more radical and separatist view contrasts with Offred's perhaps more like integrated or less confrontational stance. It potentially foreshadows their different approaches to resistance and survival under the new regime.
But despite these differences of opinion, their enduring friendship is so clear. Even after Moira came out as gay, they eventually found their way back to a comfortable physical intimacy, their bond ultimately proving much stronger than any prevailing societal expectations or even their own initial uncertainties.
Yeah, I think their ability to maintain their deep friendship, despite their, different worldviews and the societal pressures surrounding sexual orientation,
Right.
speaks volumes about the strength and resilience of their connection and that fundamental importance of female solidarity in a world that often seeks to divide and isolate women.
The actual rise of Gilead itself is depicted as this frighteningly gradual process.
Yeah.
The suspension of the Constitution is presented as a temporary measure, and there's this almost eerie lack of any major public outcry or organized resistance. People largely retreated into their homes, passively watching television, waiting for some kind of direction, with no clear enemy to focus their opposition on. It's this chillingly passive acceptance of the dismantling of their own freedoms, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The insidious step-by-step nature of Gilead's, ascent to power and the notable absence of widespread effective resistance really highlights the inherent dangers of apathy and the terrifying ease with which fundamental rights can be eroded when people are willing to accept incremental losses of liberty.
Right.
And I think the lack of a clearly defined enemy really further contributed to that paralysis and inaction.
But Moira, ever the astute observer, she sees the writing on the wall much earlier, warning Offred, look out, here it comes, they've been building up to this. She recognizes the underlying currents and the escalating threats that Offred, at least initially, seems to dismiss or underestimate.
Yeah, I mean, Moira's prophetic warning serves as this crucial voice of foresight within the narrative. She accurately recognizes the ominous patterns of oppression and the steadily escalating threats to their freedoms that Offred, perhaps, caught up in the normalcy of her daily life, initially fails to fully comprehend.
Even when the military begins to take these, increasingly drastic actions, Offred's initial reaction is one of disbelief and a sense of unreality, later realizing it wasn't the regular army she was witnessing at all, suggesting the emergence of this new, more radical and extremist force operating outside the established norms.
The ambiguity surrounding the identity of the military forces and Offred's delayed realization really point to the deliberate confusion and uncertainty that often accompany the early stages of a totalitarian takeover,
Right.
where the traditional lines of authority and loyalty become increasingly blurred and manipulated.
There are these disturbing accounts of suppressed marches, small in number, fueled by fear and desperation, and quickly and violently shut down. Bombings of public spaces create further chaos and a climate of fear, potentially serving to justify increased surveillance and the erosion of civil liberties. And Luke actively discourages Offred from participating in any form of public protest, likely out of fear for her safety.
Yeah, the brutal suppression of even small acts of dissent through violence, and the deliberate creation of an atmosphere of pervasive fear, you know,
Hmm.
those were highly effective tactics in silencing any potential organized opposition.
Right.
And Luke's like cautionary advice, while undoubtedly motivated by a desire to protect Offred, tragically reflects the chilling effect of the regime's methods
Mhm.
on individual action and the public expression of resistance.
We also get this glimpse into the abortion riots from before Gilead through Offred's somewhat detached memories of her mother and her friends and their fiercely held opinions, and Offred's youthful resentment of what she perceived as their like overly aggressive behavior, and the raw and hateful slogans they used, fucking pigs, fucking bleeders, and let them bleed. I mean, they reveal the deep and bitter societal divisions that Gilead would later so cynically exploit and exacerbate.
I think these vivid memories of the abortion riots really serve to highlight the pre-existing social and political tensions surrounding reproductive rights
Mm.
that Gilead skillfully like co-opted and twisted to justify its own, extreme and misogynistic ideology,
Right.
and Offred's like youthful resentment of her mother's activism. I think it underscores the generational divides and the complex, often fraught nature of these deeply personal and political issues.
And then Nick is introduced, this enigmatic and ambiguous figure, first seen by Offred simply breathing in the garden. And she's acutely aware of his low status within the household. He hasn't even been issued a woman, yet he carries himself with this almost casual, certainly non-servile demeanor that immediately like intrigues and captivates her attention.
I mean, Nick's like deliberately ambiguous status within Gilead's, rigid social hierarchy,
Right.
and his seemingly, nonchalant attitude in the face of such strict control
Yeah.
immediately make him a figure of significant interest and
Oh.
potential disruption to the established order.
Right.
And his lower status might, afford him a degree of invisibility,
Mm.
allowing him to observe and potentially act outside the strictures of the regime in ways others can't.
And Offred finds herself inexplicably drawn to him, describing his scent in this incredibly visceral and evocative way. Smells fishy, not fish or decaying rat. Tan skin, moist in the sun, filmed with smoke. It's this very human, almost primal attraction that cuts through the sterile environment of Gilead.
Yeah, that intensely sensory description of Nick is particularly significant, I think. It stands in such stark contrast to the sterile and controlled environment of Gilead,
All right.
and it suggests this natural, almost untamed quality about him that Offred finds like deeply appealing. And the phrase "smells fishy,"
Mm-hmm.
subtly hints at a potential untrustworthiness or perhaps like hidden motives
Right.
that just add to his kind of enigmatic allure.
Their very brief initial interaction, just a single, almost furtive wink from Nick, Offred's immediate internal reaction, and then her subsequent uncertainty about his true motives. Is he being friendly? Is he testing her? Or is he perhaps one of the eyes? All of that just contributes to this really palpable sense of underlying tension and danger and forbidden possibility.
Yeah. I mean, that seemingly simple wink carries a multitude of potential meanings within like the intensely paranoid context of Gilead's, pervasive surveillance state. And Offred's immediate uncertainty and her, rapid calculation of possible interpretations really reflect the constant will to analyze even the smallest interactions for potential threats, or conversely for fleeting glimmers of opportunity or connection.
The handmaid's tightly controlled social interactions are also starkly portrayed, emphasizing the absolute necessity of averted gazes and very carefully guarded exchanges. If there are sounds coming from inside, we try not to hear them. Nobody's heart is perfect. This chillingly illustrates the fear of empathy and the primal need for self-preservation within the system.
Yeah, the enforced practice of like averted gazes and the deliberate attempt to ignore the suffering of others
Right.
are deeply ingrained survival mechanisms
Mhm.
within a society built on systemic oppression and fear. That stark acknowledgement that nobody's heart is perfect.
Hmm.
It hints at the internal moral compromises and
Yeah.
the erosion of natural human compassion that Gilead actively fosters.
Even the guardians, who appear to hold these minor positions of authority, are themselves subject to immense fear and stringent control. Their potential thoughts of even a simple kiss are immediately and brutally linked to the threat of severe punishment. Their entire focus is channeled into their assigned duty, the distant hope of promotion to the angel corps, and the even more remote possibility of marriage and eventually being assigned their own handmaid. It's such a meticulously constructed system of carefully controlled desires and limited incentives designed to ensure their absolute compliance.
Yeah. The stringent control exerted over the guardians, at all levels of Gilead's society,
Mm-hmm.
really powerfully demonstrates that the oppressive system affects, everyone,
What?
not just the handmaids. Their desires are, carefully channeled and manipulated by
Right.
the promise of future rewards and the ever-present, very real threat of brutal punishment,
Mhm.
effectively ensuring their unwavering compliance with the regime's dictates.
The almost surreal arrival of the birthmobile, heralded by its distinct siren and its ominous red color, throws Offred into this hurried and ritualistic departure. Inside, despite the urgency and the sterile context, there's this strangely luxurious atmosphere with the unexpected red carpet and curtains.
I mean, the striking red birthmobile with its overtly symbolic color,
Yeah.
you know,
Mm.
immediately signifies the central and almost sacred importance of childbirth within Gilead's ideology
Yeah.
and the incongruously luxurious interior.
Yeah.
This stark contrast to the handmaid's usual austerity
Yeah.
powerfully highlights the regime's absolute focus on reproduction above
Mhm.
all other concerns.
And then the encounter with Warren or Janine inside the birthmobile is so unexpected and poignant. Her subtle shifts between like manic laughter and